Good morning. My name is Garrett Sheehan. We'll get started with our webinar in just a moment. We appreciate you hanging with us. We know that we're a little bit late start this morning. We'll start in just another moment. We'll let people join into the webinar today, creating a welcoming culture, workplace, and environment for people with disabilities. And we'll get started in just a moment. We'll let people join.
I don't know why I'm on the list twice.
I noticed that.
All right. Good morning, everyone. We'll get started with the webinar now, and then more people can join in as they come through. Again, today's webinar is creating a welcoming culture, workplace, and environment for people with disabilities. My name is Garrett Sheehan. I'm President and CEO of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce and Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce. We do several webinars on a regular basis, and we want to thank United Illuminating, Southern Connecticut Gas, and Connecticut Natural Gas for supporting our programming throughout the pandemic. Also, the other chambers that we work with to stream these webinars, and all of our investors who support the chamber throughout the year and every year, but especially this year, really critical for us and for our operations to have their support. So we appreciate everything that they do for the chamber, and it allows us to provide this programming to you. We're excited about the program that we have for you this morning. It's presented by our Diversity and Inclusion Council. Cecil Austin and Jean Christensen are our chairs. If you have not been involved with the council, please consider it. Jesse Phillips is our staff liaison. You can reach out to the chamber, reach out to Jesse directly, and we can get you involved with the council, which has been doing a great job, and we've had more and more people joining over the last several months. We're excited to continue the work that they have done. They are presenting our topic for this morning, and it is an important topic, and I want to get into introducing the speakers that we will have, give them each a few moments to start us off talking about this issue. And I'll start first with Heather Latorre, who is the CEO at Marrakesh. We also have Sharon Denson, Executive Director at Disability in Connecticut, and Michelle Dupree, Director of Disability Services with the City of New Haven. Heather, I'll start with you, and thanks for joining us this morning. So much of the work that Marrakesh does is in this area. When you think about disabilities in the workplace, what are some of the things that people should be thinking about as we get started this morning?
Oh, there's so much to think about. Of course, we've been around for 49 years, so we've been doing a lot of thinking over the years. But I have to say one thing, as long as we've been here and through the expertise we have gathered as a service provider and as an employer for 750 plus people, I think the most important aspect of full inclusion and diversity in the workplace is that we're never there and we're never done. It is a work in progress, and we have to continue to learn and improve, be transparent, communicate, and change for everybody.
Thank you, Heather. And we'll come back just a few moments as we get the discussion going and take questions. Your questions in the chat, you can start putting those in now if you have them. Let me turn now to Michelle. And Michelle, the work you do with the city is critically important. What are some of the biggest issues that you deal with just on a regular basis with the city, issues that you try to combat and take care of and address?
Well, I spend a lot of time making sure the city complies with various disability laws. So that is a bulk of what I do. And then, but I also inform city leaders on the needs of the disability community. New Haven, 26% of our residents identify as having a disability. So it's important that our city leaders stay connected to that community, and I'm the conduit for that. So I hear from people with disabilities on their concerns and issues as well, and communicate that up to the leaders. So do a lot of different things, but try to make New Haven the best place possible for people with disabilities to live and work and shop and eat and all the rest of the good things we have to offer.
Well, thank you. And we'll get come back to Michelle in just a moment. Let me have Sharon come on now. And Sharon, you're have a statewide organization. Tell us a little bit about the activities that you guys do.
Disability in Connecticut is an affiliate of the Global Disability Inn, an organization composed of businesses committed to the inclusion of disabilities, of people with disabilities in their workplace and supply chain. We have a number of different activities, and basically what we work with is educating our members on best practices for disability inclusion in the workplace. So being involved in this particular event is very exciting because it fits it exactly with our mission and what we do.
And Sharon, I know you had some slides you wanted to go over, and I can run those from here, or if you want to share them on your screen.
If you could run them, that would be great. I'm not as familiar with Zoom, and I want to make it as seamless as possible.
Perfect. I will turn those on right now. You should see them in a moment.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay. Can you see that?
I was able to see them. I don't know where they are. What happened to them? Oh, now I can see you. So
it threw me out for a sec. Here we go. We'll get them back
that's
up.
all right. Listen, we're all in the same position here.
There you go.
When I was asked by Garrett and Jesse and invited to this particular event and was asked to present, I looked at all the materials I had and was told I had 5 to 7 minutes. So I figured I could talk really fast about a really important topic, and being from New York, I probably can do it, but nobody would really understand me, and that's kind of important. So I cut it down to 3 slides because the basics of disability inclusion are really very simple. It is not as complicated as one might think. And the businesses that have come along with us on that disability inclusion journey have found that that really is the case. It is relatively easy. It makes common sense. You're dealing with people and, and all the things that happen in your human interactions, and people with disabilities are people, and that's just the way it is. What we have found is that if you build it, they will come. And that is really the secret to creating a disability-friendly workplace. That's the first step. People ask me, or people say to me as an objection, they'll say, well, we don't have a lot of people with disabilities applying for jobs. I don't see a lot of people with disabilities coming to buy anything at my shop. And I get comments like that. And the reality is that until you make your business accessible, those people will walk on by, as will the talents they provide and the money they're willing to spend. So the question then has to be, how much do you want to miss out on outstanding talent? How much revenue do you really want to miss out on? And I did not have the time today to go through the numbers, but the numbers are significant. And there is outstanding talent with disability waiting to be hired. But if your website and application process is not accessible, they're not going to apply. And that just makes sense. So again, let's think about it as like Field of Dreams, that old movie. If you build it, they will come. We could go to the next slide. This is another part of that. Accessibility benefits everyone. And I believe we've all had the opportunity. In fact, I've seen this happen. This exact thing happened at a law firm I was calling on when I was in sales for Westlaw in New Haven a number of years ago. And the steps were clear, but the ramp was covered with snow. I needed to use the ramp. The reality is that that making anything accessible makes it accessible to everyone. And people sometimes think, oh, I have to justify the cost of making our website accessible, of making our premises accessible. The reality is that people beyond your imagination will use that accessibility factor. And again, why wouldn't you open your doors to better candidates? Why wouldn't you open your doors to more revenue? It seems, the answer to me seems pretty simple. Next slide. Okay, these are some things to think about when you are trying to make or increase access to your business. First one is ADA compliance. And businesses think a lot about avoiding lawsuits. And for some people, that's their biggest, unfortunately, their biggest motivation. And the reality is that most people with disabilities are not rolling through the town looking for places to sue. It's just not happening. But what they are doing is looking at your business and going right on by if they can't get in. And nobody can really afford to miss out on revenue, customers and revenue. Create a diversity and inclusion mission. This is part of a lot of businesses' mission. It has been growing over the past few years. And with the tragedies in the African American community, this diversity and inclusion mission has become even more important. And so as we're moving forward, we're going to see more of this. And people with disabilities are part of that picture. Disability in Connecticut works with Connecticut businesses to make that happen. We also want to ensure that we are recruiting the best candidates and not inadvertently screening out qualified candidates with disabilities. Sometimes I get the message that, or the objection that, wow, there's a lot of unemployment and there are thousands of people looking for jobs. Well, my answer to that is go to your human resources department and find out how many of those thousands of resumes are applications by people who actually can do the job. And I know that your HR people are likely to say that they have been using a candidate screening program to screen out those resumes. So that really finding that good fit is really hard. Again, why would you make that more difficult by excluding people with disabilities? There are people with disabilities who can do almost any job. Disability is so varied that the things that if you have a disability that you can't do, there's so many things that even one individual can do. And we need to look at the ability, not the disability. Again, that goes into making it easier to find the best employee for your job. When you own a company, when you are in the human resources department of that company, you know the importance of building a great team and the importance of finding great people to put on the team. Your success as a business relies on hiring the best people. And often those best people, or sometimes, depending on are people with disabilities. Don't screen them out and make your job harder. You also don't have to be a disability like I said, to benefit from accessibility features. When I entered Quinnipiac University Law School, they had offered to put in automatic doors at the law library and in the legal clinic. And I thought that was really wonderful. And as we came to discover that I was one people person using those automatic doors, because I do use a power wheelchair for mobility, but you would be surprised at the hundreds of people using those automatic doors when they were carrying piles of law books and bringing in AV equipment, doing all kinds of things. Those accessibility features made a huge difference. So those are some of the reasons why you should build it and why you should welcome people with disabilities into your organization.
Sharon, I like one of the things you said, and we say this a lot in the diversity and inclusion area, is there's obviously a moral reason to do this, but you can easily it's a business case as well. It is dollars and cents, and there is a real value. We would like people to just do it on the moral reasons, but the business case is compelling.
The business case is very compelling, and disability with AAPD, the American Association for People with Disabilities, hired Accenture to do a study to see if disability inclusive companies were actually more profitable than their peers, which were not inclusive. And they discovered, and this was a study done in 2018, that those businesses which had a disability inclusion mission and which in general were inclusive of all people were more profitable than their peers. And they ran the numbers every single way they possibly could, and those companies still were more profitable. So inclusion really equals profit. And again, I went through those reasons in my presentation. So it goes beyond being nice or being good. And by the way, that reputation helps you too in the community with your business. So.
It speaks to everyone. You're right.
Yeah.
And it's a culture within your workplace. Also, let me just remind everyone who's listening, if you have questions, you can put those in the chat now. Michelle, let me go back to you. I think maybe one of the things that businesses could be guilty of at times is it's just not awareness. Not everyone's disability is on the surface. How should a business kind of be able to always be on the lookout to make sure that they're making their offices, just the way they operate, accessible to everyone?
Well, I think we first have to start where New Haven residents with disabilities see the barriers. And we did a survey, and the number one barrier our disabled residents identified was people's attitudes. And so businesses, the zero cost change you can make in your business is change your attitude about people with disabilities. Whether it's like me, who have a very obvious physical disability, or invisible disabilities, whether it's somebody with a psychiatric disability or a brain injury or MS. We come in lots of shapes and sizes and issues, and being flexible in how you serve people with multiple or different needs is really important. So check your attitude. Be helpful, ask ways you can modify things instead of just saying, we can't do that. We can't have somebody read a menu to a blind person. That's just a silly way to operate, because that one person is not going to patronize your business. And like me, when I'm with a large group and we're trying to pick a restaurant or a venue, or somebody calls my office and says, we want to hold a big event in New Haven, where's the most accessible place? I'm going to tell them where the places are that I think are the most accepting of people with disabilities. So whether you have a ramp or not, your attitude is going to be the number one thing. And of course, ramp is always a high priority on my list and everybody else's, but there's more to accessibility than just ramps. So keep an open mind. And, my office is willing to provide guidance anytime to local business. There's huge tax breaks for businesses that have to make accessibility improvements that have been around for almost 30 years. And when I mention it to businesses, they have no idea it's been out there. So I think you can always call my office and I'll guide you as best I can. But I think keep an open mind is the best way to create an accessible community.
Thanks, Michelle. Heather and Marrakesh, people with disabilities are your clients, but they're also your employees. And I know that you guys create incredible products, but as you think about that workplace, what are some of the thoughts that go into it and making it work for everyone within your organization?
So like I said, it's an ongoing process. So every single year, we conduct an agency-wide accessibility survey, plan, and status report, and we give this out to our staff and the people we support. And to the point that Michelle and Sharon made is we are looking not only about our architecture and environment, but attitudes, employment, communication, transportation. Things like having a more accessible website came up this year. So I hear you, Sharon, about that. And also, the more people that we do hire that have different skills, the more our business could grow. recently, we thought that there were enough companies in Connecticut that could support anyone with any type of disability or ability. And we found out a few years ago that there were no agencies around that would provide, we met a mom of a son who was graduating from the American School for the Deaf. And she said, there are no residential services where her son could go and communicate through American Sign Language to to his residents, his housemates, and to his caregivers 24/7. And I thought that maybe she was mistaken, and we did some research and we realized, wow, we need to provide this service. There are no services like that. And so what did we have to do? Well, who speaks American Sign Language? Yes, some interpreters, but a lot of times it's people who are deaf. And we realized that we had to figure out how to attract and hire and retain and include and make a welcoming environment for people who are deaf at Marrakesh. And we learned a lot. And it wasn't a one and done, like we're gonna make sure that there's the buzz-in system to our building flashes a light so they know when the secretary is letting them in. It's not just that, it is attitudes. And that's a great point of making sure that we provide sign language classes to people's coworkers. So when there are agency events, they're able to speak to each other and they're able to communicate. And there's so many steps that we've taken to make, our goal is to have a welcoming environment to all of our employees. So that's just one example.
Heather, it's a part of your organization, so it's something that you're always thinking about. But just in hearing you speak, there's things that have surprised you or that you weren't aware of. So for another business out there, what would you recommend to them? How they may be sitting there going, "Yeah, this is great. I want to do everything I can," but not know the next step or what they should do to be more aware, to really start looking out.
Well, definitely besides going to Michelle and Sharon, because they are the experts and can help guide them, they're the consultant experts. We look at every single process of your employment, from how your advertisements are, your application process, your job requirements. Sometimes you have a job requirement that was put in 30 years ago that exclude people with disabilities. And you're like, why is that there? So it's really taking a fearless moral inventory of everything about your employment and how that might not be necessary or how that might not include people with disabilities. But I think Sharon is the answer to this, so I'm gonna defer to her at this point.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking about what you were saying, and there are two comments I want to make. First of all, what Michelle said about attitude, that makes a huge difference. That attitude and the mission regarding disability inclusion comes from the top of an organization. So it is so important that the CEO of the company, the owner of that business, if it's a smaller business, is committed to disability inclusion, and the attitude comes down. Is also a wonderful attitude to have, because if you have that attitude to people with disabilities, is it an extension of an attitude of service? And businesses that have a service attitude are successful businesses. That's just the way it is. So again, it benefits everybody. Secondly, we are glad to work with any business that needs help in regard to best practices for working with any type of disability. And you had made a very important point and this is a change that businesses who are inclusive, and I'm talking about general inclusion, are starting to actually interview for the job, for what is needed exactly to fulfill the requirements of that job, when previously they were interviewing for skills that were just not needed. An example of this, very exciting example, a very successful example, is the autism hiring program at the Travelers. Now, the Travelers does not have a distribution center. It does not have stores, like it doesn't have retail stores. It doesn't have a very big mailroom, so to speak. What does the Travelers do? And what the Travelers has done is realize that there are people graduating from college, and they've connected with the University of Connecticut, who are high on the autism spectrum, who are incredible when it comes to coding and to IT. And they looked at their hiring process, and they looked at their interview process, and realized that so much of that interview process had to do with skills that were not needed to do the job, social skills that were only needed to do the interview. And once they eliminated interviewing and judging on those skills, they hired some of the most outstanding people. They did a pilot with some of the younger students, and there was this one young lady who was a sophomore, and they interviewed her, and she had made some unusual comments during the interview, but they asked her, like they did with all interviewees, we have this particular problem with our database. How would you solve that? And she thought for a minute and told them the solution right then and there. Well, the hiring manager took the guy from HR, pulled him out of the room and said, I want to hire her now. And the HR manager said, you can't, she's only a sophomore. She's not going to graduate for a couple of years. So what they did is they held on to this candidate, made sure that she was a summer intern every summer of her time at UConn, and then hired her when she graduated. So this is the kind of, and the Travelers has benefited greatly from this. And the people who are being hired have benefited greatly. So this is just one story of many, by the way. I just give you one example of many of outstanding stories of people now who've changed their hiring process. So they're hiring for that job, not for an idea of, not for the past. And also, you had mentioned job descriptions. Look at your job descriptions. Some of them will say things that really eliminate someone with a disability, even if that person can do the job. So for instance, a job description may say something like, must stand for 10 hours. Well, if you look at the job, do you really need to stand to do the job? And asking questions like that will open up that job to a large variety of people. And the reality is that for most jobs, you don't need to stand to do them. So, and that's just a simple example. So there's so many exciting things that you can do that will attract people with disabilities to your workplace and attract more customers and change your attitude and make you just welcoming in general. Give you a reputation in the community as a welcoming workplace and a welcoming place to do business. And the benefits are there, definitely there. So
Right.
Thank you.
Michelle, I know you're gonna have to jump off in just a moment, but how are we doing in New Haven? Would you say accessibility is strong in New Haven, or do we have a lot more work to do?
Oh, we have a lot more work to do. I think we, as a community, are better than a lot of other communities, but I still think there are significant barriers in the community, both public places and private places. So we do, we still have a 68% unemployment rate. A large number of the people with disabilities working part-time would prefer to work full-time, but they can't find full-time work. And I know you can say, well, that's the economy, but these survey numbers definitely predate our current economic woes, so it's not something that's new. Disability community is held pretty closely. The law against discrimination has been around 30 years, and yet the unemployment rate has been relatively stable. So we have not made inroads on the employment rate. And we know based on our study in New Haven that people with disabilities that are working have a significantly higher life satisfaction, community participation when they are working. So those opportunities that businesses can provide people are so critical, not only just to the economic success of our disability community, but just the vibrancy of our community and the diversity. And so I think any efforts we can make to improve diversity in our customers, in our employees, in our community is only going to make it better.
Thanks, Michelle.
And at Marrakesh,
Oh, go ahead.
Marrakesh, At Marrakesh, we have job coaches and community connectors whose job it is not only to secure jobs for people with disability, but it's to provide a service to our area businesses as well. We had a business call yesterday and said, we need this machine operator. They call us, and because they want someone to come in. We already know people's skills. We know what they want to do. We know the time they want to work. And so we give them like a fast track. They don't even have to spend money to advertise. They call us. We have people, we know what people are looking for. And we have repeat employers that continuously call us and say, you know, do you have someone for IT? Do you have someone to wait? Do you have someone for this? And I have to throw out some of our favorites like Archie Moore's and Yale University, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Edge of the Woods. They call us all the time when they have an opening instead of spending money to put an advertisement out. And we find lifetime employment for a lot of people. So if employers want to get involved that way, you know, definitely get in touch with us at Marrakesh. We have P. Shaw at Marrakesh, Patrick Shaw at Marrakesh.org, but definitely contact us and we will help you find that match. You're our customer just as well as people with disabilities.
Sharon, one of the things that was brought up was mental health, and maybe it's not just mental health, but I'm sure that there's some disabilities where there's a stigma around hiring someone with that disability, even if a place is welcoming to disabilities. What are some of those? Is mental health an area of that? And we know people just in general are uncomfortable talking about their own mental health issues because of the way people will look at them. How do we overcome some of those issues?
That would be a real challenge. And again, and you mentioned there are disabilities. First of all, disability in general by society is looked upon in a negative way. So, and a lot of it is personal and how you feel about it. Nobody wants to have a disability. And I could say, you know, I acquired my disability mid-career, and I found a difference in the way people, because I have a physical disability, it's very obvious, like Michelle's, I found that the attitude of people was very different prior towards me, just upon meeting me, maybe not even speaking with me, the way somebody looked at me prior to my having my disability and then afterwards. And this is something that essentially we can't avoid. How do we work with it and how do we make it better? And my favorite phrase is that familiarity does not equal contempt. Familiarity equals familiarity. And the challenge is that many people have never met a person with a disability. Many people have never worked alongside of a person with a disability. Many people have not spoken with a person with a disability, so they really don't know enough to really have an accurate opinion. So part of it is part of the inclusion story within any organization, including the workplace, is once you start bringing in people with disabilities, you're going to start, as a result of people's familiarity, bringing in more people with disabilities. And it just happens that way. It's part of human nature. And like you said about disabilities, which have an extremely high negative appearance to some people or feeling about, mental health is one of them. The other one is people on the autism spectrum. And a lot of that has to do with the way people on the autism spectrum or people with mental health disabilities are portrayed in the media. And it's such a huge circle and so much has to change. But you know, we can't get overwhelmed by that. And Michelle already made the point essentially that you can't legislate attitudes. Legislation is just the beginning, quite frankly. And if we look at any minority and bringing any minority to parity with the general population, we could look at what's happened with any minority and see that legislation really is just the beginning. So for those of us who are involved in disability inclusion or diversity and inclusion, we have a lot on our plates, a lot of attitudes to change. But once they have changed, the change in the actions of people who've experienced that is massive. And they have the ability to influence those around them. So it's about, you know, you have to be patient. One thing we also found that people are hesitant to hire veterans because they think about PTSD and relate that to veterans. And again, I think that has to do with dramas on TV more than anything else. But there are ways to work with anyone with a disability who wants to work because that individual is motivated to find a way to do the job. And sometimes much more so than someone who does not have a disability. So there are barriers, there are things to conquer, but organizations like myself and Marrakesh, and by the way, we work with a number of service providers who actually are able to refer our members, our business members, to candidates with disabilities, just like Marrakesh does. And those providers are really important partners to us. So anyway, I'm rambling on, a lot to get in a small amount of time, but thank you, Garrett, for the opportunity.
No, it's great information. Michelle, I'm glad you're still able to be with us. So let me ask you this. This was a question posed in the chat, and I think we've talked about it from different angles, but again, what is a good way to encourage businesses to become more available to everyone? And I think we've talked about the carrot and the stick, that there's economic value, and there's also regulations that exist as well. But what are some of the approaches that you use, Michelle?
Well, certainly they can advertise that they're accessible, inclusive for all people. If you're a restaurant and you're accessible, you can advertise that. I know that some organizations are now restricting the ability for the organization to use venues that are not accessible. I know I've led the charge for the Connecticut Bar Association to not hold any meetings in places that do not comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And some big establishments got cut from their meeting rotation because of that. The University of Connecticut School of Law did the same thing, and has forced some of the entities to make changes. The ADA was designed the Americans with Disabilities Act was designed two ways of encouraging, or a few ways of encouraging a more accessible business. One is provide hefty tax breaks to businesses for making access a priority. It provided that the only way to enforce the ADA is that through the Department of Justice coming into a business and telling them you need to be made accessible, or private lawsuits. So it really has to be motivated based on the business's wishes, unless you're going to get sued. And so certainly looking at those generous tax breaks. There's lots of nonprofits that will provide technical support on how to serve businesses. There's the New England ADA Technical Assistance Center in Boston that will answer all kinds of questions about how to comply with the law. There's lots of resources out there. The businesses just have to want those business dollars to come through their door to make them motivated enough to do these other things that have been available to them for decades. And yet we still see non-compliance. And so people like myself, we've now had a law for 30 years, and a place says, if a restaurant or a store says to me, oh, I didn't know I needed a ramp, I call them out on it. I say, it's been the law for 30 years. And that's where I kind of lose my cool a little bit. It's one thing to say, we're a small business, we don't make hardly any profit, we can't afford to put on a ramp. That's different. But to tell me that you didn't know, it gets you nowhere with me anyway. But I think there's plenty of opportunities for businesses to seek out and find support on how to make their businesses accessible and how to recruit people with disabilities. You just have to, where there's a will, there's a way. And the spending power of people with disabilities and their families is tremendous. It's billions of dollars. And so nationwide, you know, that's a lot of income for a small business to give up because they don't want to spend $5,000 for rent that they'll get back when they file their taxes. So,
Thanks, Michelle. We're getting close to wrapping up, and I know we're a little bit shorter today, but we will have this entire webinar on our website, and you can go into the recording, and we'll make sure we get the word out that it's there. Heather, what would you want businesses to take away from today? What's a good takeaway for them? Something that they can start doing right away.
Well, I'm going to steal something that both Michelle and Sharon said. Number one, top-down commitment. The boss has to be in agreement. The boss has to see the value and the expansion of business and believe that. We actually have people with disabilities that serve on our board of directors. They help us make decisions. It's so much easier to have a group of people to help. We also have, and you might have a multicultural committee, a D&I committee, like that's very important. I love that the chamber, the New Haven Chamber, has a D&I committee, and we never forget about people with disabilities when we're talking about diversity and inclusion, which is awesome. Communication back and forth is really great, breaking the ice. I remember I used to interview people 10 years ago, and they would start talking about a disability or another protected class kind of thing. And I'd be like, la, 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 I don't want to know. I just want to know how you do your job. Someone actually reminded me that I did that to him when he interviewed with me. And I just like held my ears. And now I'm like, we embrace people's differences. We love that people are different. We know we make money because people are different, and that our business grows and we have a better reputation. And so I look at it very differently than what the lawyers told me to do years ago, is like try to ignore it and steer us back to how you fulfill the job duties. But talk to people. When they're your employees, talk to them. What can we do? Have that annual accessibility survey. It's so helpful.
Thank you, Heather. And Sharon, same question. What's the big takeaway you see for businesses out of this, if they tuned in today, or we get them to tune in at a later time through our YouTube channel?
Accessibility equals profitability. So if you look at it even from the bottom line, I know that's a very simple way of looking at it. Making your business accessible is a way of opening your doors to more people and more customers and more profit, and making your organization a better organization for attracting great talent of all kinds. And so the benefits are huge, and the amount of time it takes to create that accessible workplace and the amount of resources is relatively small compared to the benefits. So that's what I'd like to leave. And there are so many people to help you, so many organizations to help. We are glad to help any businesses in Connecticut. If you're a part of a business with a location or a headquarters outside of Connecticut, I can refer you to the correct organization. If you have questions about accommodations, my favorite place is askjan.org, askjan.org. They have an extensive list of disabilities and accommodations, and it is amazing how simple most of them are. So just take that first step, and you're going to find that it's going to be a wonderful journey, a truly wonderful journey. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Appreciate it. Michelle, I'm going to give you the last word. And one of the things I took away from what you said is that we still have a lot of work to do here in New Haven and this region as well. Michelle?
Yeah, I see it as an opportunity. New Haven really is positioned well to be an inclusive community, and we have lots of people with disabilities. But I think we need to do a better job of finding employment opportunities and commerce opportunities and community participation opportunities. And so we can only improve from here if we all work together. And that's why I'm so honored that the Chamber has embraced this, and so happy to be included here today during Disability Employment Awareness Month. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you to Sharon and Heather as well. Yes, as we start October here today, we're really glad that we can put on this type of programming. It's important for the entire business community to hear these conversations, to become a part of the conversation, and then to take action. So again, thank you to our Diversity and Inclusion Council for creating welcoming culture, workplace, and environment. We're so glad to have you today. Apologize again for our late start, but we will have the video recording of this available on our YouTube channel, and we encourage you to share it with others. Everyone that could not make it here today, this is an important dialogue, and we want to make sure that this message gets shared and passed along. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.